I think that everything you put out there should be custom made to fit the needs of a particular person, your target user. I love the word bespoke. The dictionary definition is to be custom made to fit the need of a particular user, and this term originated from fashion. I'm appropriating it and applying it to how a brand should treat themselves. In contemporary usage, bespoke often has become a general marketing term and branding concept that implies exclusivity. When I talk about becoming bespoke, I'm really talking about your positioning as a brand. But before positioning comes purpose. Before you know where you land on the market, you need to decide on what your reason for being is so that you can communicate that to the person that you're custom fitting for. There's a Japanese concept called Ikigai that illustrates this process really well. When we think about the Ikigai diagram, you can imagine 4 overlapping circles. One of them is what you love. The next is what the world needs. The next is what you can be paid for. And the final circle is what you're good at. Where what you love and what the world needs overlap is a mission. People go on missions often, and you'll see that they're passionate about what they're doing and there's a really big need in the world for it, but they may not necessarily be making money off of it. Where what you need overlaps with what you can be paid for is your vocation. A lot of people spend their entire careers in this zone where they are getting paid for something that there is need for, but maybe there's not as much passion there. What you're good at can overlap with what you're paid for, and this can be your profession. Maybe it's less of a job, but it's more of a long-form career path. There might be passion missing out of there, but it's something that you're good at that you can offer to the world. Perhaps this is where you're landing if, for example, your parents demanded that you become an engineer or a doctor and you are really good at math or you're really good at biology and you can be paid a lot for it, but you're not necessarily passionate about it. What you have is a profession. Where what you're good at overlaps with what you love is your passion. If you're really good at something and you love it a lot, but perhaps money is missing from the equation, you're just passionate about it. But where all of those 4 circles overlap, love, need, payment, and skill, that is your ikigai. That is your reason for being. If you can find something that lands in this zone, you'll be fulfilled, you'll be delighted, and the world is going to be happy to pay you for what you're offering. Now, amongst these overlapping circles, there's also some more zones of overlap, like an area between passion and mission that might be delightful and fulfilling, but again, with no wealth. There's an area between mission and vocation that might be exciting, but lacks certainty and have you on edge all the time on where your next paycheck or where your next job is coming from. There might be an area between vocation and profession, which is comfortable, but it'll feel empty. I find that this zone, which I'm calling zone 3, is where a lot of people spend their life. And lastly, there might be a zone between passion and profession that's satisfying, but it might come with a feeling of uselessness. Once you've discovered your ikigai, that is your purpose. Knowing your purpose is excellent because when you're sure about it, you can start to communicate it with others. And then comes the strategic piece, which is your positioning. I have another visual tool for this that I find to be extremely helpful as you start to workshop your positioning. This is called a positioning map, and I learned about these and had to do a ton of them when I was studying marketing at MIT. These positioning maps are designed as an analysis tool that illustrates where a brand exists in the market based on the perception of others. That's important to remember. But let's draw this out so that we can understand it a little bit better using a case study Equinox Gym. We'll get to the positioning maps at the end of this case study, but first we need to dissect and answer this question of how exactly Equinox is successfully charging over $3,000 for access to gyms. Now, most of you know the gym memberships are not that expensive. Yes, they feel like a bit of a luxury sometimes, but typically they are nowhere near $3,000. But through really intentional positioning, Equinox was able to charge a premium for their gym memberships, and people happily pay those prices. So let's figure it out. The ads that Equinox puts out are highly targeted. They attract their ideal audience and they repel others. There are people who probably look at Equinox ads and don't understand what's going on in them, do not like them, or think that the messaging is actually offensive. But for the people who they are trying to speak to, they probably love that disruptive and bold, audacious attitude that Equinox has. And so we can see how through intentional targeting, they are really pulling in a certain group and repelling people who are not their people. I would describe Equinox ads as edgy, daring, and gaudy. They sell a very specific lifestyle to a very specific person. But why? Why have they gone this avenue? Why have they taken this position? Equinox capitalizes on core observations made about their target customers' psychographic tendencies. They capitalized on a couple of different trends. The first one is that millennials demonstrate success through lifestyle and not through material possessions. Equinox came into and rose in the market in a time where millennials were holding a big part of the market, and they still are. Millennials hold a lot of the purchasing power right now. Boomers hold, I think, the majority of it at the moment, but millennials are a huge group that need to be seriously considered. In a couple years, I think they're going to hold the majority of the market. If none of that makes sense to you, don't worry about it. All it means is that millennials are spending a lot of money right now. And so they targeted this group. They understood that what indicates clout and class in the millennial generation is a healthy lifestyle, not necessarily having flashy accessories or anything like that. Health has become a status symbol, and people desire community and belonging. Equinox really took advantage of these psychographic needs and desires and tendencies and took them all the way. So if we look at a positioning map and study different gyms and fitness facilities, we can map out where Equinox is. In this specific positioning map, I have my x-axis as accessible to luxurious, plotting fitness facilities that are more accessible, maybe through pricing, location, branding in general, and the ones that are really luxurious, that command a high price point and not that many people can work out there. On our y-axis, we have focus facilities all the way up to ones with many amenities. So we're gonna see our gyms that have a ton of different workout machines, different workout classes, maybe a pool, a sauna included. And at the bottom of our axis, we're gonna see highly specialized facilities like a bar studio or a spin studio, things like that that just do one thing really well. Somewhere in the middle, we're gonna see those gyms that may have different types of equipment, but perhaps they don't have as wide of an amenity offering. So as we map Equinox against some of their competitors, we can see that they've positioned as super luxurious with an unmatched level of convenience and generous amenities for those who can afford their premium pricing. We can see that the white space in this map indicates openings in the market. This could mean an opportunity, or it could mean that there's no demand in this space or possibility to occupy it. So a gym that is very affordable and niched in its facility offerings would either be undesirable because there's not enough equipment to be worth purchasing a membership, or impossible to run because of the cost of hiring trainers and other things for that workout type. But a gym that is accessible and has many amenities would be that sweet spot. But can anyone truly pull it off? Often this is where local businesses come in to occupy the space where the chains cannot. There's an opportunity in this area of the market. Now, this is a very specific example for the service offering of fitness. However, you can do this type of positioning map for any type of product or service. The important thing is that you have two axes. One of them will often address pricing, You can have one end being high prices and the other end being affordable, or accessibility and luxury, exclusivity and accessibility, practicality and indulgence, something like that. And then the other axis is going to be relevant to your market. So maybe you want to talk about conservative or fresh, timeless or trendy, corporate or disruptive, experienced or novice, a large team or a small team. You can choose the axes and make it what's relevant for your business. One of the most simple ways to organize your axes is price and quality, making your x-axis about pricing and your y-axis about quality. But there's so many other different ways that you can map things out within this illustration. The most important thing to remember when you create your positioning maps is that it is based on customer perception. This means that it doesn't really matter how you would like to position yourself if other people don't see you the same way. You want to map out where you land in the minds of your customers and audience. I decided to commit an entire lesson to pricing because it's such a huge topic. And even through this entire lesson, we're really only scratching the surface because there's so much to this. But I believe that pricing is one of the best tools that you have to position yourself well in the market. And it's not just about how expensive or cheap you are. It's about the endings that you use, the numbers you use, and what your price point says about your brand. Let's get into it. Increasing your revenue is one of the best ways to increase your profit. Of course, the higher revenue you have in your business, the higher chance that you are making a living wage for yourself and potentially others through your business. But with an increase in revenue, you must deliver more and more value to your customers or clients, and you probably are going to need to serve more and more customers and clients in order to make more revenue. So let's decide how to hit that sweet spot in pricing where you are delivering value, that people who pay for your offering feel like they got what they deserve, they feel satisfied, like the price was well worth it, and that you also feel well compensated for the work that you've put into developing the service or product. The first thing is to know your cost. If the cost of production is higher than your price, your profits will be in the negatives, which is deeply undesirable. This is a really simple concept. Of course, if it costs $3 to make a t-shirt and you're selling it for $2, then you're in the negatives. So this isn't gonna work. So to avoid this, you have to fully understand the cost of running a business and how this changes with volume as you scale. People will commonly neglect to consider less obvious fees and expenses, so make sure that you take into account the little things like subscriptions you have, the printer ink you'll use, or similar expenses to these. If you have a product-based business, these things might be a little bit easier as it's often quite clear how much it costs to make your product, but just make sure that you embed into it some other things that you might not automatically consider, like the examples that I just mentioned. If you're a service provider, this is where things can get really sticky because a lot of us as service providers think that there is no cost of running our business other than our time, but you'd be mistaken. Even as a graphic designer or something similar to that, once you've bought your initial laptop, yes, you might have the initial cost out of the way, but how much does your Adobe Creative Suite subscription cost? Do you pay for extra Google Drive storage to keep and store all your files and all your client files? Do you print out things to test them out? How much does that start to cost? These are the little things that you really want to take into account. Once you've figured out your costs, you can use a really simple pricing model called cost plus pricing. This takes your costs and adds a simple fee and marks it up so that you are able to keep the lights on. This model is viewed as really ethical, it's really simple. However, it ignores the roles of competition and customers, and it may yield a suboptimal profit. Things can go very wrong if you miscalculate or you neglect some costs. So there's another option that I'm going to give you called competition-based pricing. This method benchmarks against competitor rates, which is quite fair. The problem is that it again ignores the roles of customers. It might be misleading if the competitor's business model is different, and it's ineffective if the product is so new that there's no close comparison to make. Competition-based pricing may also trigger a competitive response where you end up racing to the bottom. So I really wouldn't recommend this for anybody who provides any type of service. Like if you're a photographer, for example, you don't want to solely base your prices off of your competition, because then you're always going to just be trying to be the lowest bidder, and that's your only way of getting a customer. So although knowing your competition is such an essential part of determining your pricing, and I would say just as essential as knowing your costs is, I don't think that should be the only element that you base your pricing model off of. To inform the way that you do your pricing, monitor the way that your competition does business. Look at the products or services that they provide and how they market them to customers, the prices that they charge, how they distribute and deliver things, their brand values, their aesthetics, how many people they employ, the type of people that their team consists of, their presence online and offline in publications, traditional media, and other things. Like I said earlier, though both your competition and your costs are useful to think about, there's a really nuanced way that I prefer to use to hone in on an optimal price point. Since we've done so much thinking about who our target audience is already, we can start to figure out how much they are happy to pay for your offering. 2 questions to ask yourself are you working with business to business or business to customer positioning? The answer will likely play a prominent role in how much your customers can afford to spend. And as the price goes up, how much does demand go down? The fewer substitutes there are for your offering, so the lower supply there is, the less sensitive to price your audience will be. This is why having a unique product, service, or position is so vital. If there are tons of people doing the same thing as you, or even just 1 or 2 others doing the exact same thing as you, and you don't have a clear differentiator, it's just gonna come down to price. Whoever has the cheaper price will often win, unless you have things like brand loyalty and heritage on your side. But if you're a newer business, you probably don't have those things, and so you're just gonna have to price lower than your competition. That can work for some people. However, it's more useful to have a really unique position so that you can price based on your value, and people will be willing to pay whatever price that you determine to be fair. Once you've taken all these things into account, you know what your costs are, you've analyzed your competition, you know your target audience so well that you have determined their willingness to pay, you can then start to leverage psychology. Now, it's so important to be ethical with the way that you do this and use it as an amplifier for your already great offering, and make sure that everything that you're saying is true and fair. But psychology is a really useful tool to be able to resonate better with people. If you understand people really well and you know how to speak to them to address some of their desires, then your messaging is going to be that much more effective. Price psychology aims to build an alluring offer that captures consumer attention and makes a product or service more desirable. This thinking combines brand strategy, marketing, design, and behavioral economics. To understand how methods for psychological pricing work, we should first have a basic grasp of human behavior drivers. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a theory of how humans prioritize different things in their lives. At the bottom of the pyramid are physiological needs, the things that we humans need for continued survival. These include food, water, shelter, rest, oxygen, and more, the really basic stuff. Above the physiological needs are safety needs. After we feel secure, the theory states that we start to care about belonging and community. Do these things sound familiar from our Equinox case study? We want to love and be loved by other people. The next tier above belonging is esteem. And the top tier is self-actualization. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a foundational element of modern marketing theory. I bring it up here because it can be used as a framework for an effective pricing strategy. Psychological pricing works because these methods are based on a deep understanding of what drives people. When we understand people, we understand customers. The first psychological pricing strategy that I want to present to you is tiered pricing. This can be done for both services and products. And first, I'm going to go over how this can work for service offerings. You may want to offer shoppers 3 different methods of how they can work with you: the done by you, done with you, and done for you. In this model, the price increases depending on how much customization and personal time that a customer receives from you. The done by you offering could be things like an online course, a product, a template, a pre-made, or something like that. It's going to be at the lowest price point. The done with you service offering is typically a semi-custom or consulting. This will be at a lower price point than a full customization, but it's a good entry offer. It will probably sell the most, so just be aware that this middle option needs to be something that you are happy to do for a lot of people. The done for you services are fully customized, and they're usually your high ticket offers. You will sell this the least, but that's okay because you probably do not have the capacity to take on a lot of clients for this type of service offering unless you have a large team. You probably don't have this bandwidth, so you only need to book a couple of clients like this a year, if that. And that is going to still bring in a really substantial revenue since that offer will be so high ticket. The great thing about your lower ticket offers is that they are more scalable. If you have something that is relatively hands-off, like a course or something like that, that once you put that initial effort in once, that product can sell itself over and over again with very little management from you, you can scale it to millions and it won't affect your workflow. That middle offering though might take a little bit more work from you, and so you need to be ready to take that on if you are to get a lot of awareness and a lot of people wanting to buy from you. This tiered offering is really useful because it takes away this question of whether or not somebody should work with you and changes it to a question of how. If you're presenting somebody with 3 different ways of working with you and engaging with your brand, they're more likely to say yes because there's probably a type of offering that's going to work at their price point and for their needs. If you only have one offering, one package, or one price point, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because if that doesn't perfectly fit what they need, they're just going to walk away and find somebody else. A similar type of psychological pricing can work for product-based businesses, and this is called the Decoy Effect. Now, the Decoy Effect, it's all about perceived value. We see this a lot in places like movie theaters where there's a small popcorn and maybe it's $5, a large popcorn for $9.50, and then a supersized popcorn for like $10. There's only a 50-cent difference between the large and the supersized, and so a lot of people are just going to say, well, I'm just going to go for the supersized then, because for such a little price difference, I am getting so much more product. And in this example, the center option, the large, is the decoy. The seller is using the decoy effect to influence shoppers to buy the more expensive option because the perceived value is so much more for a low price jump. Who would buy a large when you could supersize for 50 cents more? Some people will still buy a small, of course, but hardly anyone's going to buy that large. That is the decoy effect. The next pricing strategy that I want to talk to you about are endings, charm pricing, or skimming. There's lots of different terminology for these strategies, but they all kind of mean the same thing. Companies will often use endings like 99 to influence buyers. Although there's probably only a 1 cent or $1 difference and not much at stake, this is effective. Charm pricing can increase sales by 24% compared to the rounded price points, according to the book Priceless, The Myth of Fair Value. The way this works is that our brains read from left to right. So if something is priced at $2.99, we're going to see the 2 first, and we're going to perceive the price to be closer to $2 than it is to $3, even though that's technically untrue. Prices ending in 9 make consumers believe that they're getting a great deal. No matter how effective charm pricing is, it could also rub people the wrong way. Since we're so used to seeing things priced at 99 or 97, it can come across as a little bit scammy. So depending on whether you want to make your product feel really accessible or luxurious, you should make a decision here. Whole number pricing can emphasize quality. The customer who will quibble over a couple of pennies might not be your target market. So this is a move, pricing something at a whole number like $1,000 that will establish authority and confidence and quality. It deprioritizes the idea of pricing altogether. Depending on your target audience, you can strategize your price endings. And the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to psychological pricing is price quality heuristics. There was a study where a group of people were asked to taste different wines. In one tasting, they were given bottles of wine with no labels, so you couldn't see any of the branding, you couldn't see the pricing, and they were asked to rate the taste of both different bottles of wine. The results were mixed, and people tended to prefer one type of wine that actually happened to be a lower price point. But the same study was done again, and this time they were told the prices, they were shown the branding of the bottles of wine. Of course, as you might expect, in that second study, people were often saying that the more expensive bottle of wine tasted better, even if they disagreed with themselves from earlier when they didn't know what the price points were. From this, we can learn that when faced with a choice between multiple unfamiliar brands, people will often use price as a proxy for quality. This results in a positive correlation between prices and product liking, known as the price quality heuristic. When you're targeting a luxury market, having your prices be too low can actually be detrimental to your brand and drive away those buyers. So pricing can assist with authority building in this way. If you want to be seen as a luxury brand, and if you want to attract that type of customer, you actually need to price at a high enough price point that they trust you. If things are priced too low, we've been trained to believe that they're too good to be true. And so these are things you want to take into account. Now, I say this to you not because I want you to command a super high price point that does not match up with the value you're offering, but I find that most of the people I talk to don't have that problem. Most people are pricing a little bit too low. And so this is the conversation I'm having with you, because I think that most people could stand to increase their prices. However, you need to make sure that the value that you're providing justifies the pricing that you have, and make sure that your audience can actually afford that pricing. What's expensive to a certain person may not be expensive to another. So you just need to figure out where that line is and where that flinch point is for your specific audience. Pricing can assist with authority building in your brand. Now, brand authority has 3 different pillars: ability, benevolence, and integrity. When you want to foster trust in your brand, you need to make sure that people believe that you have the ability, meaning that you can do what you promise, that you have benevolence. People want to know, does this business care about me? And you can communicate that to them by understanding what their needs are and what their core desires and the emotional drivers that push them towards the actions that they take, and addressing those things. And to have authority, you must have integrity. People want to know if your business has a set of values that they agree with. If these 3 things are in line, then stuff like psychological pricing will just be the cherry on top in your authority building. But it's really important that you have the ability, benevolence, and integrity to build brand authority. Now, going back to the foundations of branding, to build authority, your audience must know, like, and trust you. This relationship is nearly impossible to achieve without appearing in some form, whether through image, video, or voice online. So I want to encourage you to let go of the belief that being visible is equivalent to losing your privacy. If you're a shy person, remember that you can share opinions, views, and expertise online without being totally transparent about anything. But showing that you're human and sharing a little bit of your story and showing up face to face with a camera and talking about what makes you an expert can go a really long way in building that brand authority. If you're just as captivated by these topics as I am, then you can look into our Essential Guide to Visual Branding. It's an ebook and toolkit that walks you through in detail the entire branding purpose and embeds these theories of marketing, behavior economics, and psychology that inform visual design. Our goal is to ensure that all of your visuals are not only beautiful, but strategically rooted. In the ebook and toolkit are these worksheets that will help walk you through the steps of branding yourself. We hope you'll check it out. It's a really great way of supporting our studio and allowing us to continue to bring you this type of content. I hope that you've enjoyed and gotten some value from this lesson.